This is TWiT.
I could play the 1984 Apple commercial for you right now, but Apple would immediately take the show off the air, and I don't want to do that. But imagine in your mind, wah, 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 wah. On January, what was it, January 20th? 24th. Which is tomorrow.
1980. Apple will introduce the Macintosh.
And then something
You'll
about
see
why
1984 won't be like 1984.
Whoosh, we will prevail.
You just reenacted it. I don't think Apple will take that down.
That Foley work was it's outstanding. I love it.
He did it all with his mouth, ladies and gentlemen. And a couple of pair of old brown shoes on sandpaper.
I was gonna say that. It's your show, but that's a really odd way to pay tribute to the 30th anniversary of Kevin Smith's Clerks. It was a great movie. I mean, it could define. It was like the first movie that I'd ever seen that had people my age on movies that were actually talking in like my patois, so to speak. I'm
now closing
that, Max had something to do with it.
That tab so that we can't accidentally play the 90. Of course, it is the 40th now anniversary of Macintosh. It shipped January 24th. This was one of those things where they announced it and it shipped almost immediately, or had they pre-announced it in September or something like that?
No, they did the Super Bowl ad, and then they rolled it out, and
boom,
that was
there it is.
On the day, and they rolled it out, and they even rolled out. This is a little funny quirk. They rolled out Macworld magazine that day too. They had actually done a pre.
I remember
planning of the first issue of Macworld literally was at the event, which is wild, right? The access that they had behind the scenes to the Mac team.
I think we all got a subscription to Macworld, as I remember when we bought a Mac. I think you got a year subscription.
There was that too. That deal lasted a very long time. That deal lasted like 25 years, I think.
Wow.
The card in the box.
Course,
that was a big one.
Mr. Snell was editor-in-chief at Macworld
for 10, 15 years, something like that. So I was there. It's sort of like after the salad days, but yes, I was there. I started working at Macworld and Mac User before that in the 90s when Apple was doomed, and they got better.
They were doomed.
It was a bad career move.
I used to go on the radio in 93 and 94. This was in the Gil Amelio era, and then the Diesel, Herr Schindler, and used to say, Apple, it's doomed. They're terrible. They're terrible. They have no the memory management on the Mac is terrible and all that. And then Steve Jobs came back, brought Next with him, and that was the big that was the big savior. And of course, Bill Gates, $150 million helped.
Yeah, we passed the line item a little while ago now. You have to be vague about it, but we could still say vaguely that Mac OS X sort of arrived at what is now kind of the halfway point in the Mac's life, but it's actually Mac OS X era has actually been around a few years longer than classic Mac OS, no matter how you define those dates, because there was a fuzzy sort of 3 years in the middle.
Next step, you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, that we think of we're celebrating 40 years of the Mac, the classic Mac OS, but about 16, 17 years after that, they replaced it with the Next Step based Mac OS X, and that's what we've had since then. So more than half its life now. Yeah,
in fact, if you look at Next Step, and this was on the famous Steve Jobs beautiful black Next Cube, you might say, oh, that looks a little familiar, especially the column-based Finder and all of that. This is what got ported over to the. Apparently, at the time, there was some debate inside of Apple whether they should buy BOS or Next Step. BOS was beautiful and did run on Mac hardware, but Steve Jobs came with Next Step. He was kind of bundled in with Next Step, and I think Next Step was the right choice. And they got Avi Tavanian and a bunch of other great people too, John Rubinstein. All right, Burke is on the ground. We have to do this. So in 1984, Apple released on January 24th, 40 years ago tomorrow, the first Mac. Is this the original 128K Mac? This is John Slanina's original. You can see it's yellowed beautifully. That beautiful patina of age. And we haven't booted this since 2013 on the 30th anniversary. So every 10 years we have a promise to attempt.
Could be some interesting smells.
To boot this up. So go ahead, Burke. Oh, the hard drive. We've turned on the hard drive. It's spun up. Do you
have like a wooden spoon you can touch the switch with just in case?
Oh, there's the beep. I heard the beep. You heard the beep. All right. You've mic'd it and everything. Good for you. We are now watching. It's booting from how big is the hard drive, John?
80 megabytes.
An 80 megabyte aftermarket hard drive. Who made it? Do you remember?
Damn.
CMS, and he got a SCSI port. Uh-oh. Is that a SAD Mac? Is that a?
It doesn't. It's not seeing the disc.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it hasn't booted yet.
Yeah.
Well, no. Both things had to work.
I hear
You
sound.
could hear the hard drive. Yeah.
The hard drive is an actual mechanical hard drive. It's not a solid state replacement.
Do we
right?
have some
It could be
emergency
taken away to
floppies? We could.
Floppy drive needs to be replaced.
Okay.
Oh.
Well,
Whack
it's
it
not
with
real.
a.
Well,
he's
I got
got
mine.
some
Interesting,
stuff.
which means that it could be looking at something.
So,
Yeah, it might
so
be
if you
reading.
do have
Let's
if you
keep
do
an
have
eye
an
on
old
it. It's an old
Mac
man.
like that. There's a thing called floppy emu that actually you
Right,
plug into the floppy drive.
That's
and
what
I
you're
talked about
using, isn't it?
A while ago.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm using. And
Yeah.
you put an SD card with disk images on there, and it'll boot. It'll also emulate
John
a
has it. Wait a
20
minute,
megabyte hard drive.
John has a backup
So.
floppy. Is this
Alex Gumble bought this for me.
Alex got this for him
But
so
he
that
didn't install it.
he didn't install it. So you think is your hard drive shot? I mean, your floppy drive shot? Wait a minute. Is anything happening? No.
No.
This is worse than Al Capone's vault.
The mouse is working.
So here's the floppy. Kids, if you're under 40,
Zap the PRAM.
this thing is older than you. So no wonder it's having a hard time waking up. We'll get it. We'll keep. He got an aftermarket SCSI port put on his Mac 128K so that he could have that CMS 80 meg, not gig, 80. I could fit one shot from my Sony R7 on that Alpha 7 on that. Oh, wait a minute. He's hysterical. He's got a 20 megabyte hard drive. He's going to try. We're going to keep working on it. Do you remember, Andy, buying your first Mac?
Yes. There's no way in hell I could afford it. So what happened was I used to work there in New England. There was a chain of like department stores called Lechmere. I used to work in the computer department, and they had this is back when like teenage employees were not well supervised. They were very well trusted, which was their mistake. And so I got my first Mac. It was a 512K Mac that I bought for I think $77.77, like in the like 85, 86, 87 or so, no, 87 or 88. And the reason why was because the top was like kind of one of the vents was broken off. And maybe somebody who had access to tools and knowledge might have unplugged the logic board internally and then put it back together. And then we were required to like put like things that were out of the box, like on a shelf for discounts. And as the longer it stayed on the shelf, the more discounts they would like drop it down to until it got down to 77 cents, which means that give us any money, we will take it. So yes, like what could have been like a good like $1,000 like secondhand Mac Plus, I kneecapped so that I could get it for what a teenager working at a department store after school could buy.
How about you, Steven? You're not old enough to have bought the first Mac, I think.
No, I was late to the game. It was 2005
Oh,
for me.
oh, that's
My first one was a
that was-
12-inch G4 PowerBook.
you could have bought the
and,
20th anniversary Mac.
12-inch PowerBook, so great.
The PowerBook, it just blew. I saw someone at college have it my freshman year, and I was like, I don't even know what that is because I was not in the Apple world at the time, and I knew I needed it. I don't know why. I didn't know what I was going to
Yes.
do with it. But I was like, I have to have that computer.
I remember
And so
showing my
2005,
my father-in-law the color screen on this is one of the PowerBooks. This is a later one, I think. The color screen on the PowerBook and saying, "Look at that," because we'd only had black and white screens up until that point. So this was a big deal. Look at that trackball. So 1984, Jason Snell, where were you?
I was in Sonora, California using an Apple II is where I was. And I didn't really use a Mac until college. We used them in high school to do like typesetting where we literally just type in
Right, you'd
our
have
stories for
all this
our newspaper
PageMaker.
and print them in. But no, we didn't even do that. We literally were just printing out things and cutting them up for the high school newspaper and pasting them down. But in college, we used PageMaker, and that's where I fell in love. They had just gotten Macs. They needed people who were going to be comfortable learning them. I was very comfortable learning them, and I fell in love to the point where by the end of my sophomore year in college, I'd started my sophomore year at that newspaper. I had gone to the college bookstore. And back in those days, people who are have been college students in the last 15 years will not understand the college discounts used to be real good. They're not anymore, but they used to be like 40%, 50%
because they
off.
wanted to get you in the family, and then they
wanted to
the
hook
rest of
you.
your
Yeah,
life you'd be
exactly.
buying Macs.
So I had this Apple II. I'd stopped using it. I essentially would go to the newspaper office and get on a Mac SE there and write my papers and things because I didn't want to use the Apple II anymore. So I went to the college bookstore. They were having a sale plus the discount on the Mac SE. It was because the Mac Classic was going to be coming in a few months, which was honestly not any better than the Mac SE. And I got that Mac SE and I loved it. So that was the first. I dipped into my own college bank account that I had, wrote the check myself. So against perhaps the advice, my parents would probably not have approved of that, but I'm like, no, I have to do it. And it was absolutely the right decision to do it because I had moved on and really the rest is history. I've never looked back since then.
You're not kidding about those college discounts. My first new Mac was a Mac Plus, which I bought because like I think the price was like something like $2,000 at the time, but the college discount price was something like $800 or $900, which I could barely swing. And I gamed the system. I went to Northeastern University, went to like their college listings and found out that if you're taking any classes, they will issue you a college ID. And the cheapest 1 credit course is like $200 and something. So I signed up for a course and I don't even know what it was I spent $250 to get like an $1,100 discount so I could actually afford this.
Smart game. We do have, fortunately, the very illegal third market Torx screwdriver. That is
long handled.
The reason it's so long is because Steve didn't want you to open it. And deep inside that Mac, there are Torx screws.
The handle. Inside the handle. So,
John, apparently, you think it's the machine that's not booting? Because that was a serious ROM error you had over there. That was the hard drive?
Well, the first time, it was
bad hard drive.
There was no system.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the system.
So he's going to open it up and put that new, you want to put the new floppy in?
Well, I'm going to actually let Bernie.
He's going to open it up. We are, but the clock is ticking on the instant repair of the 40-year-old Macintosh. We'll see if we can get it limping. I remember in '83, I was working at KLOK Radio in San Jose. So I was, 27. I was an adult. I'm so much older than you guys. So I was an adult. So in '83, I would walk by the computer store, and there was a Lisa in the window, and I'd I think almost literally press my nose against the glass, going, I wish I could afford that, but it was $10,000. I wanted that so bad. But see, that set me up because then they announced Macintosh, and even January 24th, I was, thinking, oh, should I? And I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I am a 100-dayer. There for a while, they would honor people who bought a Mac within the first 100 days as the early adopters. I'd finally gotten enough gumption to go down to Macy's in Union Square in San Francisco and use my Macy's charge card because it was $2,500. And by the way, that's in 1984 dollars. So that is probably closer to $10,000 today. It's a lot of money.
$7,300.
$7,300. Now it gives you an idea of this is like not a trivial purchase.
And the Lisa,
you buy 2 Vision Pros for that.
The Lisa is like the Lisa cost $30,000.
Oh, it was not
like
10.
A car.
It was
ridiculous. In today's money.
Today's money.
10 back in 1983.
Okay. Yeah.
But in today's money, that's $30,000. So it's basically like a car. So the Mac was the affordable computer, and it's still what we would think of today as $7,300.
Crazy. But I plunked down my card because I wanted that 128K Mac, and it was very underpowered. But it was the first 3M computer, a megapixel screen, megabyte of memory. I don't remember the third M was probably a megahertz, but 100 megahertz or something. What was the processor? It was a 68,000.
Motorola 68,000.
And it was running at, I can't remember, maybe not many megahertz.
8 megahertz.
8 megahertz. But it was a great processor. I wrote assembly code for this processor. And unlike the x86, which was the current at the time, the PC had already come out 3 years earlier. It didn't have segmented memory. It had a flat memory model. So you could write to all the memory without any fooling around with segments. And so it was really easy. It was fun to write for.
It was, yeah. It wasn't fun to use though. People forget that like one of the biggest
There's a reason.
floppies.
Remember that?
The reason why, like, you could do an upgrade to the 512K Mac simply by pulling out all of the low bit chips of a 128K motherboard and putting in 512K chips. That shows you that they were kind of desperate to get the price down where it had to be, and so as a result, MacWrite had like a limitation of I think 9 pages. Almost anything that you did would involve like, oh god, the swap of death, where okay, spit out your system disk, put in your app disk, spit out your app disk, put in your system disk, put in your, as it kept like trying to have to swap and load things in and out of memory all the time. And this was at a time when PCs were fairly, the Apple II line was 100% mature. The PC line, the MS-DOS line was 100% mature. So there was a reason why you were a Mac owner or a user, and it wasn't because you wanted the most value for money or the most efficient, or it's easy to use in some ways. Absolutely drove you up a tree in others, but that's why we were happy.
We were happy campers. Yes. Is this Alex Gumpel memorabilia, John? This box, this came with the 128K Mac, just to give you an idea. This is before Apple really got packaging down. This is yours?
So the cassettes.
You saved it. Yeah, you remember the cassettes? So this is a cheesy plastic box. So Apple got rid of that, which is a good thing. And inside, John, I'm amazed at your impulse control. All of the stickers.
Nice. Still.
The little trifold, how to use it. And back when PCs were big, Apple made a lot of hay on the fact that you could use this computer by just looking at this pamphlet. And yeah, cassette. What was on the cassette? It was an audio cassette. It must have been. Wasn't data, right? Oh, a guided tour.
No, it was just like an audio book that would like. It would be a video. It would be a setup video right now.
And John even saved his floppy disk labels. But the floppy disks are gone. They were used to boot it. Isn't this cool? I mean, you got them over here?
I don't have a 128, but I do have like the very first like piece of software for the Macintosh ever.
I have no idea what happened to my 128. Oh, look at that. What is that? Oh, Alice.
This is Through the Looking Glass.
That was
I have 2 copies. One is open, one is still sealed. But yeah, it was
like a slideshow, right?
No. It was a chess game.
Oh, that's right.
Almost impossible to play because it moved so freaking fast.
I think did Stephen Capps write that? I think he did. Yeah.
It actually says by Steve Capps right on the disc.
Wow. Yeah. So this was one of the demo programs. Obviously, they had to write a bunch of stuff because nobody else.
Oh no, this wasn't a demo. This was commercial software.
No, I know. I'm saying. I'm sorry. But he was at Apple when he wrote it, and I think it was just to show what you could do. Yeah. Here's the boot disc. This is a guided tour, so it came on floppy. Look at all these. Yeah. How big were? Okay, here's a test for you, historians. How big were these floppies?
400K.
400K. 400K, and then eventually they made double-sided, and eventually they got to a little bit more.
What?
400.
No one ever is going to use 800K of storage.
400 kilobytes, but the operating system was on there. I don't remember. Did you? I think you had to boot to multiple disks when you were booting to floppy.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So you'd stick disk in one end and go.
You have a system disk,
and it had an ejector. You couldn't pull the disk out. It wasn't like a cheap
shift one.
Went,
software controlled eject,
and then you would take it out and put the next one in. Put in disk 2. I don't remember how many disks it was, but it was a lot of work. And then copying stuff was a lot of work because your operating system and your program like MacWrite, which came MacPaint and MacWrite came in the early days. You would put that in, and then you'd have to eject that to save your file, and to copy files you'd have to swap. It was a nightmare. This is why John bought that I'm sure very expensive CMS external hard drive. Wow.
It was that was a very, very big, and also it shows you again the weirdness of early Mac users. That of course the entire philosophy of the Mac is that this is a sealed box that you will never ever as a user get inside because you have no business being in there. Of course it's not expandable. Why on earth could you improve upon the perfection of the engineering we put inside here? That's why we made you go to an auto parts store to find the weird screwdriver that will let you crack it open. And yet within a year or two there were companies that, okay, what if we created sort of like a big clothespin with connectors on it that you could clip onto the actual CPU itself to add an external display, to add a hard drive, to add an accelerator. And it was the scariest thing in the entire damn world, because it was also how a lot of us learned that, so that CRT tube carries a thunder kick killing level of electricity even when it's powered off. Okay, good to know. And of course, eventually the clip would sort of like weaken or like pop off, and suddenly everything would crash like in the most glorious fashion, because your computer would be very, very confused. The idea of an accessory of, hi, I'd like to be able to like run DOS software. Okay, just put it into this PC dock, so you can have the ability to use your keyboard and your screen of your $3,000 computer to use what is now a $5,000 computer. You can always tell when people will do crazy, silly things to do something with a piece of hardware or software that the designers never intended, or maybe even were trying to actively make you not do. You know that you got something there because someone has an investment that goes far beyond the amount of money.
So the Super Bowl ad was January 22nd. That's because the Super Bowl was a lot earlier back in the good old days. And the Mac came out the 2 days later, the 24th. You could actually buy it. And as you pointed out, it was extremely expensive purchase at the time. There wasn't a lot of software for it. It came with Mac Paint, right, and Mac Write. Mac Paint was what Steve Jobs showed when he first showed the Macintosh. Oh, we're working on it. We're taking it apart. It's very, very exciting here, ladies and gentlemen. Careful of that tube, Burke. You know, it's a capacitive device. It can hold electricity. Shh. Okay. I notice he's not even wearing a wrist strap, but you are standing on a giant rubber box, right? I don't know what he's doing. I think he's not insulated or anything. Here's Steve with the Susan Kerr, I think, did this beautiful picture of a Japanese woman brushing her hair. So, of course, a famous Japanese painting, but Susan Kerr had to do it pixel by pixel in Mac Paint. Yep. She was an expert at that. Yep. It came with Mac Paint, came with Mac Write. Microsoft jumped on the bandwagon pretty quickly. By April, Microsoft had a copy of its program. Was it Word? I guess it was Word back in the day. Still is. Yeah. And Multiplan, which pre-Excel spreadsheet. This is according to Wikipedia. Microsoft Word. Multiplan came out in April, migrated from MS-DOS, and Microsoft Word January 85, a year later. Macintosh Office Suite came out the same year. That was the Lemmings ad. So after insulting IBM users with the 1984 ad, they really doubled down and had, apparently these were PC users jumping off a cliff because they were all following one another. Wow. The ad did not work according to Wikipedia.
It was the entire launch is kind of noteworthy because of exactly how well thought out it was, because you knew the stories of all of the key engineers who went into it. They were like studio photos of like almost like a class picture of all of them.
Credit to Steve for doing that, because that was back in the day when they didn't really tell you who had made your software, who had made your hardware.
Yeah, everybody signed the back of it. That was It was
in fact, hey, do you have the case there? Is it open? Can we? Once you get the case open, let's look inside.
This is like, remember that Francis Ford Coppola movie Tucker, where like they're announcing the brand new car up front with the dancing girls. Meanwhile, in the back, they're desperately hammering and putting wood into the suspension. So that
you have to feel like some of that was happening. John, can you see inside the plastic of the case? As soon as you get that, it's still attached by a variety of cables. As soon as they can, we'll look. This was something interesting because you were never ever intended to do what we're doing, which is open this thing up. Right. Steve, in fact, designed it that way. He didn't want anybody going inside it. This is Steve Jobs in his heyday, where no users going inside my device. But nevertheless, he got the designers to sign the plastic of the case, the molds for the plastic. I wonder why. Do you think he thought someday, like now, 40 years later, people would be opening it up and go, "Oh, look, Andy Hertzfeld." Steve Capps.
I think the line was all artists signed their work.
Great artist ship, he also said.
That too.
They had a pirate flag up on the on this building that was kind of apart from the Infinite Loop campus.
Yeah. Again, Steve Levy's like original book on the development of the Macintosh is still like just great reading. Even if it's not out of date at all, because it's just such good storytelling. It really is all about how like Apple, the grown-ups, where Apple was at a state where the board wanted a quote grown up unquote to be running the company. That was not in their eyes going to be Steve Jobs. So the grown-ups who were running the company were like pushing Steve Jobs into the, oh, isn't that nice? The founder is still with the company and he's still like helping. Isn't that adorable? That'll be great for like interviews and stuff like that. And Steve Jobs was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. And he deliberately went out to say, okay, give me my own engineering group. Oh, sure. Great. Have your own little project. And his project was, I'm going to undermine the Lisa by making a version of it that is better than it, less expensive, more attractive, and more marketable. And how about that? And that's why there was a pirate flag on top of the building, because they were on their own unit, answerable to pretty much nobody, because he was stealing people from Apple, from the Apple II division, stealing people from wherever. It's quite a story.
Here is.
I wanted to point out
here's the
something.
case.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
Look at that.
Yeah. So, and by the way, there is something you can wash this with to get the yellow away, but I don't think you should. So where are the signatures in here?
They were beige to begin with, so.
Yeah, these were not this color. But all the ones.
Yeah, but they were more than you would. They weren't white. I mean, they
were always
already
a little yellow.
Always.
Platinum
Oh yeah,
came
he
with
would have
the
never done white. So where are the?
On the back, they're embossed. You have to put the light right up next to them.
Oh, you have to put.
very, very back
I
wall.
see it. Oh, you can. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it because it is very finely embossed. But if I put now, do you have it over the head?
Breaking light.
He's thinking the overhead shot. Oh, I have it upside down, so we want to see the people's names. I'm gonna have to turn it right side up. Yeah, I thought. I've never seen this. I never got inside one of these, but you can kind of see when I shine the light like this. There's Andy Hertzfeld right there. Let's see if I move this. Where can you see better? Oh well, you can kind of see that there's signatures there. Where's Steve's signature? I'm looking. His signature is probably at the top, you would think, right?
No, I remember it being lower right quadrant.
There's Daniel Kotke, who was Steven's roommate and wrote the technical documentation for it. Didn't get any stock either. Wozniak famously gave Kotke some of his. But this is in the early days of Apple.
Am I remembering the quote right? With again, one of those famous Steve Jobs stories about where, oh, well, we kind of feel as though some of these employees who founded the company like kind of got screwed out of stock options. So we're all kicking in like the equal amount to the level pool. And Steve Jobs like, great, I'll kick in zero.
Zero is my kick in. Yeah, they went. Yeah. Here's Jeff Raskin's name. Now, he really deserves a lot of credit because even though he was kind of on the outs by the time the Macintosh came out, he was the one who said, we want to make an appliance computer.
Yeah.
And
he started the project and led it until Steve took it over.
Yeah. And he came up with
very
Macintosh, I
Apple II-ish,
believe, right? I can't remember. There's Hap Horn. Wow, this is really cool. I still don't see Steve Jobs' name, but I guess that's fitting because of the famous, wonderful people that I am seeing on here. Looks like Bill Atkinson, of course, who's a great guy and still very active in the community, as is
I always
Andy.
wondered what happened to the art master. What they did was they passed around an engineering plot that had like the part that was going to be made. So it was just a piece of paper, and they just passed it around the entire team over however many days, and everybody actually physically signed this one thing, and then they turned that into basically an offset. They basically used that as a mold that wherever there was ink, that would be like a cutout in the mold so that plastic would fall into it, and that would be like the embossing. But I've always wondered what happened to the original piece of paper that has the signatures of Steve Jobs and everybody
Wouldn't that be something?
who worked on it.
Yeah.
That would be somebody is saying, I'm not even saving this for when I need to build a house or send kids to college. I'm saving this in case I need desperate medical care.
I think they should put it on Voyager 7 or something, send it out into space.
Engrave it on a piece of gold and ship it out to beyond the rim.
Really, people might be wondering why we're making such a big deal about the 40th anniversary, but it really humanized computing. IBM's PC came out in 1981, and it was intended for your desktop. And I had one, and it was very much a desktop computer. But everybody kind of looked to Apple to make computing human scale, not for business, something you might want to have in your home.
All consumer personal computers at that point. We can asterisk because they were like
the Commodores and the VIC-20.
But all of them and the Apple II, right? Apple's own computer, they're all command line computers. So that the real revelation, and people don't even I think understand this now, was this idea that you had a graphic interface and a mouse or other pointer control device and a menu bar, and everything was visual instead of literally the only thing being like a terminal window that you typed commands into. Yep. The Mac did that, and it was kicking against the tide, and it took years for people to understand that interface. In fact, it really took until Microsoft did Windows, and then everybody sort of got with the program. But like the Mac was the only one, and then Amiga came in, and the Amiga from Commodore was similar, but like it was an outlier. It won in the end. It was right, but at that time it was not so certain. Even inside Apple, the Apple II still sold really well. People think now, like, once the Mac came out, the Apple II was dropped. The Apple IIe was incredibly popular. It was the driver of Apple revenue. Apple released 2 completely new Apple II models after the Mac was announced.
I remember
the 2C and the 2GS.
In 1984, Apple had an event called Apple II Forever at the Moscone Center. Here's Steve.
Forever.
Here's Steve Jobs. I know you can't really see it, but there's Steve Jobs. Thank you, Out of Sync, who said it's middle column, 4th down, and there it is. I admire Steve for not being the first on the list, not pulling the John Hancock and having a giant signature at the bottom, but really just being one of a team. And it really was an incredible team of super talented people who worked their butts off to make this thing.
If everybody should check out the Apple History Project, because it's documenting all of the individual stories of, again, Stephen Levy's book is amazing, but now it was written not necessarily within the same sort of generation of time as the release of the Macintosh. This is people who are retired, people who are older, who have lots of perspective. So if they might have had like rose-colored glasses at the time, they no longer do. If they might have had resentments, now they see that with, again, the additional perspective and context. And it's a very, very experiential sort of thing, hearing all of these histories.
Yeah, Andy Hertzfeld put this together. It's at folklore.org. Anecdotes about the development of Apple's original Macintosh and the people who made it. There's 123 stories here. Most recent is it looks like Bill Atkinson's joining Apple Computer. Is that the most recent? Look at Bill. He wrote this on the 40th anniversary of joining Apple Computer, which had been 2018. So, but just some amazing stuff. Yeah, I've read it. I've read this cover to cover. It'd be a great book, I mean, I
think it is. I think they made it into a book.
Did they make a book? Good.
I think that's the Revolution in the Valley book is the contents of folklore.org.
Just incredible.
There
it is. There's a picture of Revolution in the Valley. I guess it must be. The insanely great story of how the Mac was made. Andy published it as a book later. Nice. O'Reilly.
Yeah, and again, that's part of the press photos that they had. Again, let's get everybody together so the engineers. They even got another photo session together of, again, for marketing purposes, to make people think that, hey, this isn't just a toy machine. We've actually got the leading software development companies in the world like supporting it. So you have like Bill Gates, you have four other CEOs, the CEO of the company that published the PFS series, all together in custom little golf shirts with their logos on them, like around the Macintosh, to show, hey, look at all the firepower we've got behind this. It was, I think it feels like a hallmark event in how Apple understood that you can't just put it out there and people will figure it out. You also can't just simply, hey, we'll just make some mass market commercials of, and while dad's balancing his checkbook, mom is in the kitchen looking up recipes. Like you have to basically, here is the story that we are telling through this machine, and we're going to tell you the story of it by giving you the people who actually put it together. It's kind of a masterstroke.
Yeah. Look at all the names, many of whom resonate still today. A great team.
Yeah.
who did a great thing. 40 years ago, the Macintosh came out. And I'm the only one on the panel who had that original. No, John had it. Original 128K Mac that was good for nothing. I think I bought a Mac Plus as soon as they came out. And then was there a 512K first and then the Mac Plus?
Yeah.
Yeah, slowly. I probably owned almost every Mac from day one. Hey, it's Leo Laporte. If you enjoyed this little snippet of our programming, make sure you check out the full MacBreak Weekly. The link is right down there.